Eubank Jr. versus Benn was incredible. This was a fight fans have been wanting to see for years, especially British fans, as their fathers, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr., are legendary British boxers that fought each other decades ago. It became official this year, and though there was no title on the line, it was just a fight that needed to be happen, and thankfully, it lived up to expectations. I didn't know who would win. Benn is an explosive fighter, and I thought that if he was going to win, it would have to be by knockout, but there was multiple times throughout that fight where I thought that knockout was coming. Eubank has power too, but I thought if he was going to win, it would have to be by decision, and of course that was actually the final result. The atmosphere for that fight, of course, was incredible as well. Any fight that happens in a stadium is bound to have a great atmosphere, and of course, fights happening in the UK, where English fans always passionate about their sports, I knew the atmosphere was definitely going to be good. 60,000 fans, it was just an incredible night. I couldn't imagine the feeling that those fighters had. Their walkouts were incredible, especially Conor Benn's. That was probably one of the best boxing walkouts I've ever seen. It was also cool for them to come out with their fathers. Of course, that was a big selling point with this whole fight to begin with. Alright, both these guys never really champions before. I mean, Eubank Jr. was interim champ, and then Conor Benn had some intercontinental, international type belts, right? But they weren't actually real world champions, unlike their fathers. But that was kind of the whole sell of this fight, which to really get the old rivalry back. But let's actually recap the fight now. The first 3 rounds, they started pretty sluggish. I think a problem was, well, they were just drained. We look at Chris Eubank Jr., 35 years old. He fought in super middleweight for a while. Alright, now he had a bump down to middleweight at 35 years old. That's a hard cut to make. Okay, a very hard cut to make. I'm surprised they even allowed that to happen at middleweight. Right, he was just competing at the world level super middleweight for years. Bump back down to middleweight and still having to do this at 35 years old. I understood that, and I thought, he was going to be sluggish, and I thought that actually would affect him. With Conor Benn, I didn't think that really would affect him, right? He was a naturally smaller fighter who fought in lower divisions and was okay with that. He looked a bit sluggish as well. I was thinking maybe that adrenaline dump just hit them hard. If anybody boxes themselves, you understand. You go into that ring when you're sparring or have a fight, the adrenaline dump hits you. You think you're ready, you condition, you're doing everything right during your practicing, your training. And then the fight comes, or competitive sparring comes, and your legs get heavy, everything goes out the window. But they started to pick it up because, well, they are professionals, and Eubank probably for the next 4 rounds, I'd say probably 4 through 8, okay, Eubank, that was his fight. He was doing what we expected him to do. If Benn couldn't get that early knockout, he was teeing off on him, he was landing punches at will. So I thought that this was how the fight was going to go. Eubank was just going to get a complete shutout for the next 8 rounds after those first 3, which I'd say those first 3 were very close rounds. You could give them to Benn, you could have given the Eubank. Regardless, the whole fight was very close. But then after that 8th round, I say 9 through 12, Benn made a very solid comeback. Okay, I didn't think he had the ability to outbox Eubank, and it really, at that point, it wasn't so much outboxing, it was them just slugging. They were really standing toe-to-toe. That ring, very, very small. So, of course, that benefited Benn, who's a very explosive fighter, like I mentioned. He was looking for those counter punches, but after that 8th round, he threw it out the window. So did Eubank. They basically threw out their game plans after the 8th round and just brawled. They went after it, and that's what made this fight probably the fight of the year. Before we continue, I want to give a quick shout out to Hayabusa, some of the best boxing equipment out there, some of the best gloves out there. Make sure to use the code ALEXD, ALEXD, all caps, get 10% off your order. So just to give really the final recap, Chris Eubank Jr. won unanimous decision, 116 to 112, I believe it was. All 3 judges scored that. I thought it was 115, 113, 7-5. Okay, I thought Eubank won 7 rounds. Benn won 5 rounds. Now, it's not that big of a deal because regardless, Eubank wins, but I wanted to be fair. It was not 116 to 112. It was 115, 113, making a very close fight and a very good fight. They were going at it. And that was just a good fight for boxing because, of course, the legendary fathers came together. We saw Eubank Jr., who we thought wasn't going to have any support from his father. His father called him a disgrace a couple weeks ago. Whether that was all part of the build-up, whether that was all for play, I don't know. But I'm sure it was good for Eubank to have his father in the corner today. I'm sure it definitely helped him mentally. I thought that was pretty bad what Eubank Sr. was saying about his son, calling him a disgrace and things like that. I know Eubank Jr. was having problems with his father regardless for a bit of a while now. So I'm glad they were able to maybe finally finalize that relationship, get back together. I hope that's the case. For that makes it good for boxing. Eubank actually went to the hospital after this fight as well to get checked out. I thought Benn should have went as well. Benn didn't take too much damage, it looked like. Eubank won, but the more damage, of course, was definitely on Eubank, right? He had that big gash in his eye, his whole face was swollen, but he did enough to actually land shots, outpoint, outbox Benn. So what's the future for 2 of these boxers? Well, they definitely got to fight at a higher division. I mean, it's going to be tougher for Benn. All right, Benn's 28. I think he could do that. Eubank, he's 35, he's getting older. He can't have another fight at middleweight without it affecting his ability. I think if this fight happened at super middleweight, Eubank definitely easily wins. I think that's probably the reason why they didn't make it at super middleweight. The rematch clause is out there. It would be nice to see a rematch clause, but it just can't happen at middleweight, I don't think. Right? If they make this fight at the end of the year, Eubank has to go, 6 months and just be at 160 again come 6 months from now. I don't think it's fair. I think that was a very good fight. I think it was a very good fight for English boxing, British boxing, and just the whole boxing world in general. Me living in America, I'm very grateful to have seen that fight. The rematch makes sense for both of them, right? Especially Conor Benn. He wants that rematch. Eddie Hearn as well being the promoter. But I just don't see how Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be healthy doing that. Cutting back down to middleweight, 35 years old. Let's see if he'll be 36 by then. So yeah, he turns 36 in September. So if that fight happens in October, November, it's going to be tough. He's going to be 36 years old making that cut. I don't know. I think Chris Eubank Jr., he's on his way out. I think he should actually go for a real title shot. Those rumors of him with Canelo next year, of course, Terrence Crawford and Canelo will be fighting at the end of the year. I think a good title shot with the super middleweight division early next year would be good. Fight a good interim champ, maybe something for the interim belt out super middleweight at the end of this year. If Conor Benn wants to move up to 168, that's great. That'd be a really good fight. I don't see that happening. I think that's a bit too big for Conor Benn. He's 28 years old. I really think he can do some damage at the middleweight division. Junior middleweight division, I think he can make that cut as well. 28 years old, right? 5'8". I think he can really do damage, like I said, at around that weight class. Super middleweight might be pushing it. But Chris Eubank Jr., he already did damage at super middleweight here. Then had those 2 fights with Liam Smith at super middleweight. So he just keeps bouncing back and forth with middleweight and super middleweight. I think he should just stay at super middleweight. Go for a title shot. You're on your way out. Go for it. I think he could do it. You had to be now. He looked very sluggish. He didn't look his fully best at middleweight. I'd like to see this rematch at super middleweight. If not, Chris Eubank should move on. Conor Benn could get these big fights. He definitely could. He could definitely get a title shot at light middleweight or just middleweight in general. Middleweight division's pretty weak. It's a pretty weak division. Janabek's holding that down, but I'm sure Ben could get one of those other 2 belts. So I definitely think that could happen. We'll see what happens though. The rematch is good for us fans, but realistic for these fighters. I think they got to get past that rematch. Forget about it. The fight happened. That's good. Maybe it happened at super middleweight, like I keep saying. If not, go your own ways, do what's best for you. Go for actually a title shot in your respective divisions. Let me know what you guys think down below of this fight. How did you score it? Some people are saying it was a bit closer, a bit of a robbery. Conor Benn did enough to win. No, Chris Eubank Jr. won that fight. Who should both of them fight next? Should it be the rematch or should they fight somebody else? If they should fight somebody else, comment down below. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe. Best boxing content on YouTube. I'm out, guys. Peace.